It was the last week of summer break before returning to college. I was alone in my parents' new house, a typical American suburban home built decades ago. The white wooden siding was chipped in places, and the narrow porch creaked with every step. The street looked like a postcard. Manicured lawns, painted fences, kids on bicycles, the distant hum of a lawnmower. From the outside, everything suggested peace, but inside the house, the silence was heavy, almost oppressive. My parents had bought the place right after my graduation. They had proudly shown me around, pointing out every detail. They insisted the house had no basement, only a crawl space for utilities. I never thought to question it. But the first night alone shattered that certainty. Lying in bed on the ground floor, half asleep, I heard a dull, rhythmic knocking beneath the floorboards. At first, I thought it was the house settling, or maybe the pipes cooling with the night air. But the cadence was too precise, too steady, like knuckles tapping against wood in deliberate beats. I froze, holding my breath. The silence of the house made each knock feel louder, vibrating under my body. I got up slowly, feeling as if every move I made was being listened to. As I walked across the room, the sound followed, spreading with no clear source, as if the entire floor was resonating. Then the knocking shifted into long scratches, metallic and sharp like nails dragging across wood. My skin prickled, and despite the summer heat, a cold shiver climbed my spine. I tried to rationalize. Rats, maybe raccoons trapped under the house, but the sound was too human, too intentional. That night felt endless, and when the noise finally stopped, the silence left behind was even more terrifying. The next morning, everything looked normal. Neighbors collected their papers, trimmed hedges, and watered gardens. The normality of it all made the memory of the night even harder to accept. I decided to investigate. I circled the house, searching for holes or openings that animals might use. That's when I noticed an odd pile of wood planks, cinder blocks, and a weathered tarp stacked along the side of the house. It looked like leftover construction material, but something about it felt intentional, as if it was hiding something. I pulled everything aside, and there it was, a storm door, rusted and half painted over to blend into the wall. The hinges groaned as I forced it open. Cold, damp air rushed up from the darkness below, heavy with mold and rust. I raised my flashlight, hand trembling, and descended a few steps. The beam of light revealed empty food cans scattered in the corners, crumpled plastic bottles, and juice boxes. On the wooden pillars, carved tally marks counted days, and on another wall, grotesque drawings sprawled in jagged lines. People with distorted faces, animals torn apart, symbols I couldn't recognize. They were childlike but cruel, insane. My stomach churned, nausea rising with each breath. This was no forgotten storage space. It had been lived in. Maybe it still was. I stumbled back up the stairs, heart racing, and slammed the storm door shut, locking it with a makeshift padlock. That night, the house felt smaller, thinner, as though its walls could no longer keep me safe. I locked the windows, closed the curtains, and turned on the TV for background noise. Near midnight, the sounds began again. Not soft tapping this time, but violent pounding, fists against the floor, mixed with the harsh scrape of metal. My chest tightened as I heard the storm door rattling outside. The handle jerked under a forceful grip. I ran to the living room window and saw a shadowy figure pulling at the door, shaking it as if trying to tear it off its hinges. I froze, breath caught in my throat. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the night, and everything stopped. Moments later, hurried footsteps crossed the yard, fading into the darkness. Shaking, I called the police. Flashlights swept across the property as officers searched every corner. They found nothing. They told me it was probably just a vagrant looking for shelter. But I knew better. I had seen the drawings, felt the chill of that basement. It wasn't a shelter. It was a shrine to something sick. I lay awake the rest of the night listening to every creak of the floorboards. And the thought that haunted me most was simple, terrifying. Now that I had discovered the secret, would the resident return to reclaim it? What I didn't know was that, miles away on a lonely stretch of highway, another mystery was about to unfold. It was just after 11 when I left the last glow of the city behind. The highway stretched across the fields like a scar under a restless sky. The night wasn't fully closed. The moon slid in and out of clouds that ran as if fleeing something unseen. My headlights carved a narrow tunnel of light, showing me only enough to move forward, while everything else drowned in darkness. No cars passed me. No farmhouse lights winked from the distance, only the low hum of the engine and the pressure of silence thick on both sides. That was when I saw the sedan for the first time. Light blue, older model, sitting crooked on the shoulder with its nose buried in the grass. No hazard lights, no glow of a dashboard, only a dull metallic skin reflecting faintly in my beams. I slowed without meaning to, eyes straining against black windows, but there was nothing, just shadow. I drove past, with my heart knocking hard in my chest, telling myself it was nothing unusual. Cars break down out here all the time. People walk for help. That was all. Yet the further I drove, the heavier the thought became. That car wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. 2 nights later, close to midnight, I took the same road again. The sky was heavier now. The moon swallowed whole, and the highway seemed narrower, pressing me inward. And there it was, the same sedan, in the same spot. But now the driver's door stood wide open. The wind nudged the hinge until it cried out in a shrill metallic whine, and even with my windows rolled up, I heard it. I slowed, headlights spilling inside the car. The darkness there was thick, solid, unnatural, like a liquid filling every inch. No one waved me down, no movement greeted me, only an open mouth of black. I pressed the accelerator hard, but just before the curve erased it from my mirror, I swear I saw a silhouette. It stood still beside the open door, not moving, not hiding, only watching me vanish. That image burned itself into me. I dreamed of the car that night, and in dreams, it was never still. It was always closer, always waiting, its door open like an invitation I couldn't refuse. I woke drenched, convinced something had stood outside my bedroom window. The next morning, the news confirmed my fear. The vehicle belonged to a man who had vanished. No witnesses, no struggle, just a car on the shoulder of an empty road. Days later, I joined the search. The sky stayed low and gray, turning day into something closer to dusk. The air was damp and heavy, every step through wet earth dragging on me. The highway disappeared quickly behind us, and soon only the muffled forest surrounded us. That was when the shack appeared. It rose from weeds without warning, dark and crooked, as if it had been waiting. The roof sagged, the door leaned half broken, and a stench hit us before we stepped inside. Mold, rot, and iron filling the air. The floor was a scatter of food wrappers and empty bottles, fragments of life left behind in a hurry. But the walls carried worse things. Deep scratches in clusters, tally marks collapsing into patterns, patterns twisting into deformed figures, and eyes. Dozens of eyes carved into the wood, every one of them turned toward the doorway, everyone waiting for someone to enter. At the back, a hole gaped, round, jagged, its edges burned dark like powder had been pressed into the grain. No casing, no blood, only the echo of violence, still humming faintly in the air. The officers hurried us out, voices low and movements tense. But just as I stepped away, I heard it. 3 knocks, sharp and deliberate from inside the shack. No one else reacted, or they pretended not to. The silence afterward weighed more than the sound itself. Days later, I gave in and went back alone. It was late at night, the sky pure ink, the forest louder and alive with sounds that pressed closer with every step. The path felt twisted, folding back on itself. I reached the place where the shack had stood, but there was nothing. No roof, no walls, not even bare earth, only grass rising thick, bending in strange circles. The air there was different, colder, denser, pressing into my lungs like weight. I knew I wasn't alone. The weeds shifted as though stirred by a wind I couldn't feel, and then it came. Not to my ears, but inside my head. 3 knocks, measured, patient, claiming space where space should not exist. I froze, then I ran, crashing into my car, slamming the door shut and gasping for air. The engine started under shaking hands, the road unfurling like a narrow corridor with no end. The wheel trembled beneath my grip, but it did not feel like I was steering anymore. It felt like the night itself was pushing me forward. And as I drove, one thought grew sharp enough to cut. What if it wasn't only the car, or the shack, or the hole burned into its wall? What if those were just fragments, pieces of something larger, something that drifts from place to place, something that waits, always waiting, leaving scars, never vanishing, never gone for long. Even now, it could already be elsewhere, waiting for someone else. That was when my father's words came back to me. He used to say the danger of camping wasn't loneliness. It was what loneliness hides. The forest doesn't like witnesses, he had told me once, laughing. But racing through the night, I finally felt the weight of it. Because somewhere far from me, in a forgotten clearing, someone was striking a match. Someone was pitching a tent beneath the trees. And someone right now believed with all their heart that they were alone. It was August, the end of summer, when I decided to repeat a ritual I had carried since my teens. Camping alone felt like closing one cycle and opening another. My father had taken me into the woods since childhood, and over time I grew to love the silence of the forest. But that year, the silence felt different. The trees leaned strangely, the clouds moved too fast, and the air was heavy as if warning me not to go. I ignored it, packed my tent, lantern, knife, and food, and left. The hike to the clearing I had chosen from the map took nearly 3 hours. It was not an official trail, and that was the point. I wanted full isolation. No families, no artificial lights, no civilization at all. When I found the clearing, flat and wide with tall pines guarding it, I felt relief and suspicion at once. The space looked too perfect, as if prepared for me. I set up the tent, arranged my things, and when the sky darkened, lit a fire. For a brief time, the flames gave me comfort. I cooked a simple meal, lay back, and watched the stars open across the sky. Peace seemed within reach, but peace never stayed. The first night I woke in the dark with the feeling of being watched. I lay still, listening. The wind moved branches, twigs cracked, yet there was something else. The silence between the sounds was too deep, too controlled. I gripped the small blade beside my sleeping bag but couldn't open the zipper. Exhaustion won eventually, and I drifted off. But the sense of being observed left a mark. The next day I went to a river I had seen on the map. I spent hours there fishing, watching the water, trying to erase the unease. I caught a small fish and carried it back, but I misjudged time. By the time I returned, the forest was already black. Walking back in darkness was unlike anything else. The lantern's glow felt too weak, and echoes followed my steps that were not my own. That was when I saw the light. A distant glow swinging between the trees, as if someone carried a lantern. For a moment, I felt relief. Maybe another camper. Maybe a hunter. I called out loudly, trying to sound friendly. The light froze. It held still for long seconds, then vanished completely. Darkness swallowed it, and silence pressed down heavier than before. I reached the tent with my pulse racing, dropped the fish, zipped inside, and sat in fear. The fire crackled outside, but every sound made me jump. I fell asleep sitting upright, blade in hand. Around 3 in the morning, I woke again, restless. I needed to step outside. I opened the zipper slowly, moonlight filling the clearing just enough, and froze. Only a few meters away, a silhouette stood, still, silent, faceless in the pale glow. It did not move, it only stared at the tent. My chest pounded so hard it hurt. I forced myself to shout, "Who's there?" No answer came. Silence echoed my voice like a curse. Then the figure moved, charging straight at me. Not running like a man, but attacking like an animal, with a metallic shriek that pierced the night. It slammed into me before I could react. We rolled across the ground, and I realized at once this was no camper. Its hands didn't form fists. They clawed, scratching at my skin like talons. Blood ran warm across my face as it screamed again, a sound too sharp, too wrong. Desperation took over. I raised the blade and slashed at its hand. The cry that followed wasn't only pain, it was rage and twisted pleasure. It staggered back, then bolted into the trees, crashing branches, leaving silence behind. I stumbled into the tent, shaking, the knife streaked with blood. I sat rigid, every nerve awake. The night dragged endlessly. Sometimes I swore I heard footsteps circling, sometimes a breath too close to the nylon wall. Then came the sound that broke me. 3 knocks, right against the tent wall behind me. I stopped breathing. The silence after seemed to inhale with me, sharing my lungs. Dawn bled into the sky at last. I rushed to pack everything, moving clumsy with panic. The trail back felt longer than before, each shadow suggesting pursuit. When I reached the car and locked the doors, survival felt less like relief and more like warning. It had not ended. It had only let me go. Back home, I tried to convince myself it was fatigue or imagination. But the scratches across my face, the dried blood on the knife, and the dreams repeating nightly said otherwise. In the dreams, the figure always ran at me again, screaming, endless, and soon the dreams became waking moments. At night, in my room, I began hearing knocks on the window. Always 3, always spaced. No one was ever outside, but I knew the forest had followed me home. Now, whenever silence grows too deep, I feel it waiting. Not in the woods, not far away, but close. It doesn't need a forest to appear. It only needs night, solitude, and the belief that you are safe. And deep down, I know it will return. Not to warn me this time, but to finish what it began.